Good morning and welcome back to Hiring for Good. I am Tanis Morris with Acumen Executive Search, and with me, as usual, is my wonderful co-host, Suzanne Hannafin.
Good morning, Tanis.
Good morning. We are truly honored to have with us today our guest, Beach Pace. We are beyond excited to be joined today by someone who leads with heart, courage, and an unwavering commitment to community, Mayor Beach Pace. From commanding troops in the U.S. Army to commanding the vision for Hillsborough's future, Beach's journey has been anything but ordinary. She got her start at West Point and served 7 years in the Army as an explosive ordnance disposal officer before stepping into the world of purpose-driven leadership. Beach has led teams across sectors, from national nonprofits like City Year and Big Brothers Big Sisters to her current role as mayor of Hillsborough, Oregon. Along the way, she's championed equity, housing, small business support, and the kind of inclusive growth that truly strengthens communities. In our episode today, we'll be talking about what it means to lead and hire with purpose, how her military training has shaped her approach to team building, and why bringing your full, authentic self to the table changes everything. Beach brings brilliance, warmth, and a whole lot of heart. And trust me, you're going to feel all of that in this conversation. Let's dive in. Welcome, Beach.
Thank you, Tanis. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. I got pretty inspired by you. I've had the chance to hear you speak now a couple of times. One without you knowing, one with me right up in your grill. And I'm just so excited that we get to have you as a guest on our podcast.
Thanks for asking me.
Oh, yeah, we're truly just thrilled to have you here. Yeah. Usually when we start out, we ask our guests to just kind of tell us a little bit about their journey. In your case, go long. I mean, like, you have a fascinating story, and we would love to hear kind of how you got, and I will also just acknowledge you're in 2 significant leadership roles right now. And if you don't mind speaking to both of them,
I would love to.
That would be fabulous.
Perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in Jersey, and that was a very interesting place to grow up because you're between 2 cities, between Philly and New York, and there's a lot of influence there. And I learned a lot of life lessons just growing up in New Jersey as a WASP, a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, surrounded by all these different cultures and people and backgrounds, and I loved it. Loved my high school years. They were awkward just like everybody else's. And then even before high school, I had a calling to serve. My parents were both service-oriented. My mom was in Eastern Star, and then my dad was in Rotary. And women at the time weren't allowed to serve in Rotary. Yeah, so I've since been a Rotarian, so it's full circle there. But anyway, went off to West Point, and I really enjoyed my time there. It was very difficult for me academically, to be honest. Things didn't come super easy in the classroom, but in the field, in leadership, or on the sports field, that was great. West Point looks at 3 areas: your academic prowess, your leadership, and then your sports ability, your athletic ability. And so I excelled in 2 of 3 and fought in the 3rd and came out okay, graduated in 91 and was commissioned an United States Army officer. And then I went on to EOD school, or Explosive Ordnance Disposal School, and learned my trade there, and then went off and served in Europe. Yeah, so served 7 years active duty in the Army. My last assignment was teaching ROTC, so I got an opportunity to pick up a master's in public administration there, thinking it was nice to have a master's, and I would probably not use a master's in public administration, but I have since learned that it was foreshadowing. And afterwards, I went into corporate sales and marketing in the pharmaceutical business. I did that for almost 10 years. Loved the money, but hated how it made me feel because there was no mission base to that. And spoke to a classmate, an old West Point classmate of mine who was in what is known as the nonprofit sector, and what I am personally on a personal crusade to change to the social impact sector. So I'll get back to that in a minute. But my friend who was in the nonprofit sector said, "Have you tried looking at this sector because it's mission-based work?" And that was 18 years ago. So, and I've been in service to youth ever since. So that's the nonprofit piece of it. And before I go into the political side of my career, I wanted to say that nonprofit says what we don't do. And I like to say social impact because that says what we do.
Yeah.
And you never see the Nike swoosh, and underneath it says, "We don't make sushi." They talk about what they do.
Yeah.
And so I want to rebrand this sector as a social impact sector, because that is what we do, and that is the change we create. And I think everyone in the social impact sector should get credit for that, because they work very hard to make change for people in all walks of life. And
Absolutely.
so that's my personal crusade. Anyway, and then I had friends telling me, and friends, neighbors, acquaintances telling me that I should run for office. And I really didn't think much of it. And when I moved to Hillsboro, I was here for about 6 months, and people were saying to me, "Oh, you should run for office." And I found that strange, because we didn't know each other very long, and they were saying that I should run. And so I kind of brushed it aside, to be honest with you. And then years later, I was in the car commuting somewhere. I remember it was August. It was hot. I was on 26 in traffic, and I heard a woman named Jillian Shoney, and she, at the time, was the executive director of Emerge Oregon. And Emerge Oregon trains women how to run for office, how to campaign, specifically Democratic women. And Jillian it was like she was speaking to me through the car radio, and she said, "If you have ever been asked to run for office, you should. And if you've been asked more than once, then you should." And I had been asked many times to run. And so this woman who I had never met put this huge guilt trip on me while I was driving in the car. And I reached out, found out about Emerge, applied for the class. And I also reached out to the city councilors and in Hillsboro, and learned what do they do? What does it mean? What does it take? How do you run? What do you govern? How does it, all that. I just investigated it. And that was 10 years ago. Then I ran and was a counselor for 6 years, and then ran for mayor and became mayor January 7th of 2025. So
Congratulations.
Yes, congratulations.
And I love how you kind of foreshadowed saying, "Oh, I will never need a master's
in public administration."
public
yeah,
administration.
It's good to have,
But it's funny how our lives, very few people have a straight line and a straight path. And on the way, there are these formative moments, and you kind of highlighted some of them, but I'd like to dive deeper into those life-changing moments that you kind of took that step back and paused. I mean, going from pharmaceutical to nonprofit, one, you're making money, one, you're making a difference. So talk about some of these formative experiences and really what you learned from those.
Well, I would go back to the military, learning from some of the leaders I had. And even if they were bad leaders, I learned from them. I learned what not to do and how not to lead. The Army has something called the 12 leadership principles. Maybe it's 11. I don't know. I added a 12th. And I remember learning about them at West Point. And it's things like know yourself and seek self-improvement. Look out for the well-being of your soldiers. Take responsibility and seek responsibility for your actions. And and I could go on, but I won't. But some of them really hit me. Like, this is basic things. These are basic things that you need to know to be a good leader. And it's easy to read them and it's easy to discuss them. It's much harder to do them. Yeah. But if you can do them, you will be a good leader. And so bringing that into the pharmaceutical industry, bringing compassionate leadership, but inspiring leadership and goal-driven leadership to make sure that we are hitting the marks that we need to hit together as a team, I found made a big difference. And then just carrying those military lessons through corporate and then into the social impact sector, I think has made a difference. And you mentioned the difference between being in pharmaceuticals and being in social impact. There is a big difference as far as resources, money, opportunities to train people, opportunities to send people to training, or even just have a nice office, have a nice chair, things like that. It's a vast difference. And I was blown away, in not a good way, by the opulence of corporate America. I mean, it's great for people, and believe me, if I served in corporate and I had a good time and I enjoyed it. But being in the social impact sector, I realized there's maybe better ways to spend that money.
Yeah.
That's just me. That's just my personal thing. But
So can I ask you, you said that there's 11 things, and for you, 12. Do you remember the one
That I added?
that you added?
Humor. Have a sense of humor. You have to have a sense
Yeah.
of humor. As you're going through life, you can't take things too seriously. I tend to do that. So I try to back up and say, actually, this is kind of funny. You know?
Yeah.
This is kind of ridiculous, and that's okay. And what can we learn and move on, you know?
Yeah, and in today's world, particularly, social impact organizations are being challenged and challenged more so than
Especially
ever.
now.
Especially on the resource side. How do you keep that strong leader in the vision and mission when you're struggling? You know, that there is such upheaval right now.
Yeah. I try to stay consistent with my leadership and make sure people understand what we are doing together and what we can achieve together. And sometimes we have to say, I've been through different, waxes and wanes in the sector. For example, I was the executive director of a social impact organization in San Jose, California during the 07-08 crisis. They were social impact organizations that weren't just atrophying, they were shutting down. And so sometimes you have to make choices of what we're going to do or how we're going to serve, or maybe we serve less this year. Maybe we serve less children this year. And while that's not what we want, it's better to say, let's serve less and maintain our health and sanity, make sure we're still serving, but maybe not as many.
Right.
And that's hard to do when you are in a social impact sector and you're around people who want to make a difference to youth, who know we have youth on the wait list, and we cannot get to them all.
Yeah.
And that's just, it's one of the realities.
Yeah. And probably really tough to be at the very top of that kind of decision-making process. I want to back up just a second because I think we kind of covered how you got to your role in government, in government leadership. But I know that you pivoted into social impact. Do you want to discuss kind of where you are now and what you're doing? Just because I think it plays in. I know.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about
I know.
that.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. If you want to go back to the journey for just
Yeah.
a second, because I feel like we can't really authentically talk about all of the elements of your leadership without understanding exactly where you are too.
Yeah, sure.
So
in 2007, I believe, right before the crisis there, I joined a group called City Year, which is an organization that provides tutoring and after-school programming to youth across the country. And I was running the San Jose affiliate. And it was interesting to get into the social impact sector because the resources that I was used to in both the military and in for-profit were not there. And so if you wanted something, you had to go get it, which was also kind of freeing because if we really wanted something, we had to go get it. And so do we want to fund this or do we want to fund that? How do we want to approach this after-school program? Do we want to do 5 schools or 3? Do we want to do 7 schools or 10 schools? And then what are the resources that we need to do that? And then working together as a team to make that happen. It wasn't like, well, HQ didn't give us the budget. No. We control the budget. We go get the money or not. And so that was kind of exciting. And also annoying sometimes, especially during the 07-08 crisis. But and during COVID, there's different. And then now, right? What's going on now with the lack of federal funding and the retraction of federal funding to nonprofits, to social impact organizations, it's tough. But I see it as another wane, as part of the wax and wane of the cycle of this work. So.
And so today you're the executive director for...
I'm the CEO of Big Brothers Big Sisters. Sorry.
No, that's
You're
okay.
like, let's get there.
no, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Yeah, so I was with City Year, and then I was with an organization called Road Trip Nation, and then I'm in my 9th year of service with Big Brothers Big Sisters of the Columbia Northwest. So this affiliate of Big Brothers Big Sisters of America is one of 230 affiliates across the country. And so I've been with that organization, as I said, I'm in my 9th year, so almost 10 years. So,
And how long as a Rotarian?
I was a Rotarian both in San Jose, California, and also here in Portland, Oregon. So I would say collectively 3 to 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I do think those values, are people join Rotary because they do believe in those four core values.
Yes.
Yeah. It's been a while since I've been, sorry. But when you look at leadership, we have these core values that we hold dearly, that we operationalize throughout our organization. What are some of those core values that you hold dearly, that you really do implement day in, day out at either the city of Hillsborough or Big Brother, Big Sister?
Yeah, I think the first thing is understanding what the mission is, and are we aligned to that mission? And that's the first thing I ask when somebody wants to come in and join the organization, or even just ask me about my service with the city of Hillsborough, is what is your goal with us? What do you want to do? And even as board members, when board members come to me, or prospective board members for Big Brothers Big Sisters, and I say, what's your interest in Big Brothers Big Sisters? And some people have said, I want to build my resume. There's nothing wrong with that, but that's not somebody that's going to come through for me or the children when the going gets rough. I want somebody who said, I believe in mentorship. I was mentored. My coach took me under my wing. I was a former little. My dad was a former big, for example, or my mom was a former big. It's the connection to mission is the number one thing for me, because that will see you through the hard times. Whereas if you don't have a connection to mission and it gets tough, it's easier to say, I'm out. So that to me is the number one thing. Are you connected to mission? And then, there's also the technical and tactical abilities, right? Do you know how to work on a computer? Have you worked with children before? Have you worked in the community setting before? Have you been a board member before? Do you know how to raise money? Will you be willing to raise money? Will you make asks on our behalf in order to serve the organization, which in turn serves youth? Things like that. So,
what are your core values?
Yeah, what drives me is service.
Okay.
If I can make a difference, I should.
Yeah.
It is a duty. I believe that wholeheartedly. If I have the ability to help, then I should.
And do you think you were born, like this is your DNA, this is your wiring, and then it was like honed by your time in the Army and from parents who were service oriented? Or
yeah, I don't know, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I don't know where it came from. I think the service orientation of my parents definitely set a great example. And I saw some of the things that they were able to do with their organizations that benefited the community, and I thought it was pretty cool. But I don't think it really hit me how transformative it was. So, for example, with Rotary, my dad was on a committee that got an amphitheater built so people could come in and enjoy music. And then he was one of the folks that would reach out and have all these bands come and play. And I saw this huge field of people out enjoying this music for free.
Yeah.
And as a kid, I was like, this is cool. But now as an adult, I'm like, that's some badass shit right there.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so this may be too personal, and you can tell me if it's too personal, but there's a lot of different social impact organizations. What was the draw for kids?
I think the initial placement or my application to City Year was that I liked the fact that it was a national organization that was making a difference to youth. And I remembered as a kid how nice it was to have something to go to in the after school space, and sometimes I didn't have things to go to in the after school space. And so that spoke to me that I would like to be able to facilitate that for more youth, especially for youth whose families cannot necessarily afford it, and they would sit home alone. The hours between 2 and 6 are the most vulnerable times for youth, where they're usually home alone, they don't have guidance, and it's really easy for them to find other things to attract their attention. And so to be able to fill that space with positive influence, with tutoring or programming or clubs, that's transformative for kids. And so that was something that attracted me to City Year.
Oh, absolutely. And as 3 kids that lived through COVID, one in middle school, one in high school, and one in college. That was damaging enough. But then to have it from young, that time alone.
Right. Yeah, well, that time alone, I think, has a difference or makes a difference. And then, where we were serving, where we had the honor of serving in San Jose, was a rough area. So leaving your house was a risk in some cases. And so oftentimes the kids were sold to stay home. So the thread there between COVID and that time was isolation.
Yeah.
Right. And it was even worse then because there was not the proliferation of cell phones and connectivity on the internet. It was just alone.
Yeah.
Which is very different.
Yeah. Wow. So I want to actually talk a little bit about some of the ways that people can support Big Brothers Big Sisters, just because I believe in the mission and I was motivated by your leadership when I heard you speak. But I want to finish talking about some of these, themes that we cover here in the podcast. So, one of the really interesting questions we ask our guests each week is, if you were to have the opportunity to speak to your younger self, what advice would you give, 20-year-old Beach?
I guess every time it gets me emotional. I would say trust yourself. You got it. And I didn't know that back then.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many naysayers, of why would you go to West Point and women don't go there. That's my guidance counselor told me. My high school guidance counselor, when I told him I want to go to West Point, he said women can't go there. I said they can now. They've been accepted. Since 1976, I graduated in 87 from high school. And so I had him sign off on the form just to say that he counseled me. And then I went to my history teacher and he helped me, and my ROTC teacher. They both helped me fill out the application because it was a paper application back then.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But I would say trust yourself, that you have good instincts. And I wish somebody had told me that.
I had something very similar. I wanted to go into engineering, and I graduated in 87, and I was told I wouldn't be happy there by my counselor. And it's funny because he said, you don't talk to people when you're an engineer. You're
social to be an engineer.
And I remember it wasn't until probably 15 years later, looking back, going, I can't believe I listened to that guy.
Wow.
Yeah.
I had something similar too.
Yeah.
I went to my counselor. Maybe this is having
a
cathartic experience of talking about guidance counselors, which is, but when I went in, I was like, I wanted to go to a pretty good college. And my guidance counselor was like, you won't be able to, your grades aren't good enough. And I was like, watch me. I mean, they literally told me that I should go to community college. And I was like, no, I'm going to a 4-year university. And they're like, no, you can't. You're not, you have. And I was just like, I was so offended. I think I was
offended too.
Yeah.
I was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually was like, well, I said, why do you do this job? I did say that.
You did?
Oh, yeah. I was a little bit more like,
I was too. I think I wasn't strong then. Like I didn't have the confidence.
I didn't
to
either. I
push
just said,
back.
just sign the form and I'll go somewhere else.
Yeah.
So I didn't push back like you did. So kudos to you.
It got me in some trouble. But it's interesting though, because like when I kind of did like after a year of the pod, I kind of went through and tried to assign some just synergies across guests. And when I was trying to distill down the answer to this question, its essence was trust yourself. It was we actually created like a leadership training based on the podcast, and there's two things. One is the challenges you go through actually shape who you are, which everyone kind of knows, I think. But when we ask people what the formative experiences were that they went through, it's not when they like won or succeeded. It's when things were tough and they had to like figure it out, or they had to, dig down deep and find these qualities inside of themselves. And then the second was, it's always, you probably are our first guest who's said it so succinctly, but like it's always some level of like, I wish I would have listened to my inner voice, or I look to others for guidance that I think I knew inside, or it's really interesting that that's yours. Do you mind giving us some examples of experiences you went through that kind of you didn't trust yourself and then you should have?
Yeah, there was a moment. There's a long lead up to this, so I'll try and keep it short. But we were in Germany, so at the time I was stationed in Italy. I'd been trained as an explosive ordnance disposal technician. I was serving as the executive officer of the organization. So we took our unit and went up to Germany, and our job was to dispose of munitions that were to be used for World War III, and they had been expiring. So literally, it was past the date of landmines, past the date of missiles, and so what you do is you blow them up. Very simple. But very technical. You have to make sure that you do this correctly, or people can get dead, get killed. So I was the ranking officer downrange. Downrange means we're placing the explosives on the ground and putting C4, which is a malleable plastic explosive, on top of it. And you had to stack them a certain way, because if you don't, one could blow off and not explode, and then you drive your truck back down to place more and you kill yourself, right? So to be very specific on how you do it. And anyway, we're downrange and we are stacking some landmines, and there was a Master Sergeant Hamilton. I'll never forget him. And he was very knowledgeable. And I think he had been in the Army longer than I had been alive, and I outranked him. And I'm not the kind of person that says, I outrank you, do this, do that. I think if you have to say you're in charge, you probably aren't.
Right.
So anyway, we're downrange, and Master Sergeant Hamilton is doing some things that I felt were unsafe. And I didn't say anything. And you could tell that the soldiers were getting a little upset. And so one thing happened. Nobody got hurt, but I was just like, oh, man. And then he was about to do something else, and I said, can I talk with you? And he said, wait till we get uprange. And, hey, LT, wait till we get uprange, because he was busy. But I was like, actually, we need to talk now. And I pulled him aside, and I said, look, what you're doing down here is not according to what we should be doing. He goes, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Excuse me, I don't know if I'm allowed to.
You're fine.
You're fine.
Lieutenant, you're brand new, you don't know what the hell you're doing. And I was like, I concede that you know more than me, but I just got out of EOD school and I know the safety situation, and we are breaking safety protocol, and it's putting all of us in jeopardy. So I really regret not saying anything beforehand, because we did have that one incident. Again, no one got hurt. So before it continued, I was able to stop it, but I was shaking.
Yeah.
Because I respected the guy, number one. And, and the soldiers were like, ooh, what are you going to say, LT? Or what are you doing? There was a lot of pressure. And I did not do it well. I did not do it as smoothly and as eloquently as I said here. I was like, hey, I didn't have confidence.
Yeah.
Even though I should have. And so that's one example. But going through that, he was like, God damn it, all right, and he did what he was supposed to do. And we improved the safety protocols, and we got off the range safe at the end of the day. But I was awake most of that night thinking, what if that first incident did turn out poorly? Yeah. We all could have been dead.
Wow.
And I didn't say anything initially. And so that still stays with me.
Well, and we talk about this a lot, especially other women leaders, that there's this confidence that for some reason we have such a hard time being okay. And again, whether you're a young leader, which you were incredibly young, that confidence and growing that across the board is challenging. And I think it's these experiences that we had to get that confidence. Like we're not born like, I'm going to tell you what to do, and here's what you're going to, do. But what an incredible story and life-changing. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Yeah, it was very life-changing because we still had weeks to go.
Yeah.
Of this operation, and I wanted to make sure we all got home.
Yeah.
Did you feel that after you did call him out, whether it was rough or smooth or whatever, that he was a bit more respectful of you subsequently?
Yeah, he was always respectful. When I pulled him aside, he was giving me a hard time. But I think things got better, and I what I did know is not to call him out in front of everybody.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like, and you also told him, like, you know more than me, but I know it sounds like you did it probably being a little too hard on yourself.
Well, I mean, in retrospect, yeah, but I just, the time it took me to step in.
Yeah.
That's what got me.
Yeah.
And when I knew better.
Yeah.
It's like, come on.
That's a tough deal.
It is a tough, right? It's a tough thing. But we all have those opportunities where we're going to say something or we're not. We're going to do something or we're not. Mm-hmm. We're going to take action or we're not. Mm-hmm. And it could be life altering, depending on what we decide to do. And I didn't want it to be life altering because I didn't want anybody to get hurt, much less die. And I knew the families of these soldiers. I knew their kids. Mm-hmm. I knew, their wives. And it was one of my many responsibilities to make sure we all got home safe.
Wow.
So
you talk about and I was going to say, but I bet you learned from that so vividly. If you still, you still bring it up to where it is about saying something when other people are in danger. Mm-hmm. Like, I bet you would never question today.
No.
Never.
No, the first incident wouldn't have happened.
Right.
Right. And I would have said, whoa, hey, you're getting a little cavalier. Like, let's slow it down. Mm-hmm. Getting more experience and finding a little bit more confidence and talking to my commander, who I had a good commander, about the incident in Germany that I was speaking about. There was another incident in Moscow. So we were called up to Moscow for the 1994 Clinton-Yeltsin summit. Mm. And so that's the really interesting thing about explosive ordnance disposal, which is the Army's version of the bomb squad, is that you could be muddy and dirty and disgusting in a field in Germany one day, and then the next week you could be in a suit working with Secret Service, providing safety and security for the president, vice president, or secretary of state. And so as I was gaining confidence and learning more about my leadership style and who I was at the unit and what I could do and all that, we were called up by the Secret Service to go to Moscow. And we were in the hotel where the Clintons were staying, and the Clintons were at another location, and the teams, the EOD teams, the explosive ordnance disposal teams, the EOD teams were leapfrogging from one site to another as he moved. And so there was always a team ahead of him clearing where he was headed and a team with him. Mm-hmm. So that way we could make sure he was covered. And just so the listeners know, the Secret Service makes sure the president, vice president, and secretary of state don't get shot, and we make sure they don't get blown up. 2 different security missions. So we are at the hotel, and he is now, President Clinton and his wife, Hillary, were en route from a location back to the hotel. And they were late, which was a common thing. And that was fine, because that gave us more time. And there were some people who were gathering outside the hotel because Clinton was very popular overseas. And he also visited Italy. And man, just the people that came out for him. Anyway, so there were people gathering in front of the hotel. And the Secret Service said, it's getting to a point where it's too much. We need to use the secondary or tertiary entrance. Okay. So I take myself and a young airman who had a bomb dog down to the basement or to the side door where the Clintons would come in because it was getting too much up in front of the hotel. And by the way, it was freezing. So the dedication of these people to be out there to see him is unmatched. Anyway, so we go downstairs, and there's a side door where he would enter, and there is the stairs that we just came down, and a plant, just a big old plant in a planter box, and then a pipe that went from a wall and then made a turn up to the ceiling. That's it. A door, a staircase, a plant, and a pipe. That's it. And I said, okay. I turned to the airman, and I'm still a lieutenant, and I said, take the dog around. And so he takes him around. He smells the plant, nothing. And then he snaps, and the dog goes up on the wall, sniffs the pipe, and the dog sits. The airman, so that
That's
indicates.
a sign.
Yes.
Okay.
So, so that means he has smelled explosives. And so the airman looks at me, and he turns absolutely white. He's a very young man who just got out of training. And I had a couple years under my belt at this point. And I said, take him around again. I said, take a breath, and then take the dog around again. So he took the dog around again. Dog goes up, sits again. And now the airman is shaking. And I said, thank you very much. Go upstairs. Mm-hmm. Your service is good, right? And he's like, okay. He goes upstairs. And I'm like, what is this pipe? Mm-hmm. Right? And so now there's a difference in confidence. And I was looking back, I'm really proud of it. But we ended up getting the engineer of the hotel. We ended up getting the manager of the hotel, the lead for the Secret Service. We found out what the pipe was. It was the vacuum. Mm-hmm. It was the central vacuum for the hotel. So my sergeant, who was amazing, looks at me and he's like, Lieutenant, we got to see if there's a good suck on the other floors, right? A good pull. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
I hope you do.
Yeah.
And I said, yes. He goes, I'm gone, right? And so he goes up with these schematics looking where he could go, and he opens the hatch, and we're connected by walkie-talkie.
Wire, yeah.
Yeah. And he says, LT, I got a good suck. And I was like, okay, which sounds ridiculous over the airways, right? And I was like, great. And I was like, is this the only pipe? Anyway, blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, POTUS is 5 minutes out. POTUS is President of the United States.
Yeah.
POTUS is 4 minutes out. POTUS is 3 minutes out.
God.
Is the secondary entrance okay? Do we need to clear the tertiary entrance? Whatever. And it was like, we determined that the pipe was clear. I looked at the pipe. The other thing, it hadn't been messed with. There was dust all over it.
Yeah.
Which means nobody had been messing with it recently. And I made the call to bring the president into that side door. And then I stood there and waited near the pipe, right? And I was like, well, if it goes, it goes, but I feel confident that this is clear. And the dog falsely sat, which means that airman and that dog have to read, that dog is done.
Yeah.
Right? Like his career is over. Not the airman, but anyway. So the president comes in, everything was fine, and he went into an interview with Dan Rather, who was pissed by the way, that he was so late. But I felt good about that because there was a difference in confidence, a difference in training. We had trained more about it, and so I felt really good about that.
And it's these high stake moments. I mean, think about it. I love Bill Clinton, and think what would have happened.
To make the call to say
and being able to make that call, and you did it by also helping the other gentleman. That you were like, your services are done.
Yeah, just go upstairs. You're good.
Yeah.
What
and
growth?
That speaks about leadership.
Yeah.
How
much time had passed between
a couple years, a year or two.
Okay.
About
That's really impressive.
Well, I mean, I had a good commander, and just finding more, just going back to my training.
Yeah.
And saying, what are the things that are important here? What are the things that are not important here? What is at stake? What isn't? What can be mitigated?
Yeah.
And just going through that process in my head, and the training was phenomenal.
Yeah.
So.
And you use that, I bet, every day as a leader, because I do. What are the priorities? Narrow down. If times are tough, this is it. And you go back to those basics.
Right. What is essential in this particular situation? And then if you can achieve that, great. Then you could do like the what's nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is essential?
absolutely.
What's nice? What's flamboyant? Right.
And I know we're kind of getting off topic, but I do want to ask this question, and it's futuristic. If you had a crystal ball right now and you can tell just even what the next year looks like or guess in the social impact world and in the local government, I mean, both are in such flux because of funding and priorities and other things. What do you think this year is going to look like?
Well, I think the social impact sector is going to be leaned on quite heavily. It already is. And as people lose safety nets, they will lean on those organizations even more. And so it will be critical for those organizations to do some pretty serious fundraising to make sure that they can serve whomever they're serving, whether it's youth, like with Big Brothers Big Sisters, or other folks in other situations. So I think they'll be leaned on hard. That's what I saw in 07, 08. That's what I saw during COVID. And it's going to, we're back again. It's that wax and wane that I talked about. And I am concerned for people because there will be people who don't know to go to social impact organizations. They think they're ineligible, or they're afraid because they might feel that they would get deported, to be frank, right? So they don't want their name on record. They don't want to be affiliated. I mean, during COVID, in the beginning of COVID, during the first Trump administration, we had people who were food insecure, who were eating very little, and were afraid to go to food banks because they had heard the rumors were that they would get picked up by ICE at the food bank.
Yeah.
And so we had called ahead. The Big Brothers Big Sisters staff called to the food bank, and they said, no, the food bank said they are not on our property. They are not allowed on our property. They can come. And so I had staff mask up and go and meet families so they could get food.
Wow.
Our biggest issue right now is misinformation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I could go off on that, but misinformation is what's really hurting people right now. And then just lack of access to services. As Medicare or Medicaid gets cut and other cuts come down, grants to social impact organizations, people are going to be hurting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so we always end this question with this podcast. It is hiring for good, after all. So what does hiring for good mean for you?
Oh, well, finding the right people who are dedicated to the mission, who are committed to the mission, and who have the skills or willing to learn the skills to contribute to that mission. And that's a hard thing to find.
Yeah.
Right. But that's why my first questions, in an interview or when I'm talking to somebody who is showing interest, to say, what's your motivation? What is your why? And if you can tell me your why, then I could tell you if you're going to make it.
Yeah, that's a really I love how everybody answers that question so differently because it is iterative, and I like that for you. It's the process. It's like what is hiring for good? It's the process of finding the right people.
Yeah, and it's a tough thing to do.
Team. Yeah,
it really
for
is.
sure.
Yeah,
yeah. We both mentioned that we wanted to ask you a little bit about opportunities to support Big Brothers Big Sisters. I
Thank you.
fervently believe in the vital importance of mission-driven organizations and social impact organizations, and know that the work that your organization is doing is changing lives and saving lives, transforming the future for families and for kids who are involved in the program. And it's transformational
For the bigs.
For the bigs. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So I know that there's quite a few opportunities to support Big Brothers Big Sisters coming up. So do you want to speak to what some of those opportunities are, and then we'll put it on the website as well.
Awesome. First of all, thanks for asking the question. I really appreciate it. And thanks for having me here. There are many ways you could support Big Brothers Big Sisters, and whether you are local or around the country, the number one thing I would say is go to Big Brothers Big Sisters of America and find out how you can donate to your local chapter. So that's bbbsa.org. Or you could just Google Big Brothers Big Sisters in your area. For Big Brothers Big Sisters Columbia Northwest, I would say Investigate being a big, which means being a mentor. You can go to our website, itsbigtime.org, to investigate how you want to engage with us. There's many ways there, but one of them is you could be a big and a mentor. And that would take 2 to 4 times a month where you connect with a young person, and we do all that for you. We find the young person, make sure that you're connected with them, connect with the parent, and help you. We have case managers to help you through your mentorship journey. And we ask you to get together, as I mentioned, 2 to 4 times a month, and we ask you to be matched for a year. Anything less than a year is more detrimental to the kid than no mentor at all. So that's the first thing. And by the way, the number one thing I hear from mentors is, I'm here to help a kid, and 3 months into it, they're like, this kid has helped me. Right? They have grown from being a mentor. So that's the first thing. Second thing is donate. Right now, funds are being cut. And it is not a great time to be in the social impact sector as far as money, but it is a great time if you want to make a difference. And your investment in Big Brothers Big Sisters will make a difference to youth in our community. Then we have some events, as you alluded to. Thank you. We have January 21st is our Rappel for a Reason, where we're going to rappel off the Hyatt Hotel. It's a 15-story building, and what we ask you to do is sign up and register, and then fundraise with your family and friends and say, hey, I'm trying to raise $1,500 to rappel off this building, which will help a kid get matched up with a mentor. And so and it's fun. And it's also a little bit of badassery if you wanted to do that. And then we have our gala in September 20th. If you'd like to be a sponsor or buy a table, you can contact us. Again, our website's itsbigtime.org.
This has been such a wonderful conversation, Beach. I cannot thank you enough. And the insights, they're super valuable. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Truly. Thank you. It was really an honor to have you as our guest. And we look forward to getting an update on all the success. And I will just put out there, I will be rappelling off of the roof of the Hyatt and am actively fundraising. So if you're listening to this and don't want to rappel but would like to give money, you can give to my team.
Yay.
Awesome. Or directly to the organization, and I'll raise my own money. Sorry. I don't want to take anything away.
I love it. Yeah.
All right.
Either way works.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us today at Hiring for Good. If you were inspired by our conversation, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
And if you want to learn more about our executive search services, check us out at www.hiringforgood.net or our company website, Acumen Executive Search.
Thanks so much, and don't forget to join us next time for another in-depth conversation about transformational leadership. Until then, have fun.